Further grievances? Member for Moore.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And my grievance today is to the Minister for Energy and relates to Kalbarri's power supply. Kalbarri is a town of 1,500 permanent residents with a population swelling to 8,000 in peak holiday periods. Tourism is a major part of the local economy, and the town is a retirement destination for many. Located in the northern extremity of the South West Interconnected System on a very long feeder line which is operated and maintained by Western Power. There's a long history of power supply problems in Kalbarri, evidenced by 1995 the end-of-grid photovoltaic trial, which commenced acknowledging Kalbarri's position at the end of the grid as problematic. In March 2007, Western Power announced that they had completed silicone coating all insulators on the feeder line and were pleased to report, and I quote, that this work had reduced the length and duration of power interruptions. 25th of March 2010, parliamentary questions were being asked to the Minister then regarding the frequency of Kalbarri and Northampton outages, and the response was that 74 outages had occurred between 1st of December 2008 and 28th of February 2010. There has been an unacceptable number of outages in recent months in Kalbarri and in other communities such as Dongra, which is a very similar spate of outages. This would seem to indicate that maintenance has not been done in a timely manner. 3 major outage events this year in Kalbarri in the space of 8 weeks have left residents and business operators angry and out of pocket. Following the economically devastating outage on January 23, 2014, which lasted for 13 hours, local members of Parliament organised a public meeting to allow Western Power to brief the town regarding possible actions and to receive community feedback. One of the contributors to the length of time of the January and subsequent outages is the inability of Western Power to act on days of high fire danger. This policy has impacted on other areas of my electorate, and the Shire of Chittering experienced an outage on January 12 earlier this year for close to 12 hours, with power not restored to some customers for 18 hours. In response to an inquiry made by me, the Minister advised an extreme fire danger on that day meant that Western Power crews were unable to automatically restore power to the line until it had been physically patrolled, and they were unable to access the line because of the fire bans. I believe there needs to be procedures and protocols developed that will allow Western Power to access transmission lines as a priority service in the event of a fire ban. This action may require some clearing of vegetation and logistical support from local bushfire brigades and DEFIS. Denying the Kalbarri community, for instance, access to power in the peak holiday season is not just inconvenient but economically damaging. Since January 23rd, Kalbarri has had a further series of outages which have not only proved costly and frustrating for the local community, but have devastated the town's reputation as a tourist reputation. An outage on March 6 for 12 hours was again exacerbated by a DEFIS fire danger rating. There are further outages lasting 18 hours on March 17, 8 hours on March 18, 8 hours on March 19. The people of Kalbarri are very angry about the situation, which is causing immediate distress, financial hardship and long-term reputational loss to the tourism sector. Kalbarri has worked hard to rebuild visitor numbers, which have taken a hit in recent years with the GFC, the high Australian dollar and changes to recreational fishing regulations. Some businesses have spent years building their reputation, and the state government has invested heavily to bring visitors to Western Australia. During January and March outages, tourism operators had been unable to clean rooms, operate pool pumps, run air conditioning, deal with booking inquiries, nor operate FBOS machines to either receive money from from visitors or reimburse disgruntled customers demanding a refund. One operator described the difficult predicament of giving a 91-year-old tourist a candle so she could find a way home in the dark to her upstairs villa. Chrissy Locke, manager of Kalbarri Beach Resort, had 700 angry guests staying at her resort at the end of January when that outage occurred in 2023. She said the abuse that guests directed at her at that time was unbelievable. Many insisted she should have a backup plan to deal with the lack of power and would not accept that a generator worth more than $100,000 would not even have the capacity to maintain the pool or service all 114 units in the complex. Some visitors insisted on cash refunds, declining to take a complimentary week's holiday in the resort in the future, adding they would never come back to the town. Ms. Locke worked overtime to placate guests during this time, distributing candles, making sandwiches, offering updates of information from Western Power regarding restoration times, which invariably proved incorrect. She suggested Western Power offer no information regarding restoration times in the event of future incidents such as this, rather than the grossly inaccurate information, as guests become increasingly angry as those times were revised. This resort lodged a claim with Western Power for business losses incurred as a result of the January outage, but Western Power had not acknowledged receipt of that claim. Aside from obvious business losses, computers, faxes and FBOS machines have been affected by subsequent power fluctuations. Years of goodwill built up by the town's hospitality sector can disappear in a single power outage. Tourists fed up with the heat and dark and wanting to leave town were sometimes unable to get fuel as bowsers were not operating. Ambulances that might have night calls were sometimes unable to refuel in the morning in readiness for the next emergency. The pharmacist could not safely dispense medication. The high school could not operate online distance education classes for years 11 and 12. Householders and those in the food service sector had throwaway freezers and fridges full of food worth thousands of dollars. There have been unconfirmed cases of food poisoning, and the only businesses able to operate were those who had invested tens of thousands of dollars in generators. Nevertheless, one of those operating a generator estimates daily fuel costs around to $500. Kalbarri residents have not only had to deal with power outages, but major power fluctuations over many years, which have caused damage to electrical equipment. Recent events that have seen as many as 15 outages of just a few seconds or up to a 2-hour period early in the morning. And this affects ADSL lines and FBOS machines, which have fallen victim to power surges and brownouts. Minister, I'd like to suggest that there needs to be some actions to address the issue in the short, medium and long term. In the short term, I understand that cleaning and maintenance of the transmission line and town site lines is taking place. There have been placement of generators in the town to guarantee supply. I'd like to see those stay till after the Easter holiday period. Compensation from Western Power for businesses suffering loss due to the poor service level, providing greater incentive for Western Power to actually provide a service that meets reliability standards. Prioritisation of the silicon pole replacement program and pole replacement program. Development of protocols with the Department of Fire and Emergency Services that will allow Western Power to access transmission lines in days of fire danger to provide this essential service. Personnel to be permanently located in the town to lessen response times and carry out maintenance. Provision of generators when long outages occur, and development of an independent power support source in Kalbarri to reinforce that edge of the grid. Thank you.
Minister for Energy.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the member for Moore for that grievance. It is not only timely but an excellent grievance and highlights a real problem we have in a number of areas around Western Australia, particularly on isolated grid. There's no doubt it's a real problem. There's been far too many outages with Kalbarri. It's not a new issue, it's a long-standing issue. Even though the Western Power has put a lot of money into remedial action, they haven't fixed the substantial issue. We have to start getting to that. As the member has pointed out to me personally and showed me some pictures, is that this is a very long line, 150K, along the coast to a large extent. It gets a lot of salt and dust. They encroach on the conductors and coat it and lead to arcing outages, and they just a natural part of an environment and hopefully Western Power hopes that regularly that the wind and rain cleans them off and minimizes that. Over the last year or so, we've had light winds and no rain, and they look like, when you look at them, they're just encrusted with salt and dust, and it's dangerous. And of course, there's 150K with little demand along the lines. Then you have the end of it, a major West Australian tourist resort that's standing population of 1,500 and grows to 8,000. And tourism is struggling in many areas, and electricity is essential to their activity. So this is a problem. What Western Power has done in the past, first in 95, they looked at a standalone or disaggregated generation facility, that solar cells with generator. That was almost 20 years ago. It didn't work that well back then. It wasn't an adequate alternative to the line system. And since then, they have done a number of things. They've steam cleaned the conductors, checked the poles, and have sprayed them with silicon at a very high cost, I might add. They were hoping that that service would last 10 years, 8 to 10 years. It hasn't. I don't know if that's because of abnormal weather, but it hasn't. And then the dust and salt encrusting has come back at a severe level and had led to outages. Western Power is undertaking another round of steam cleaning and siliconing of the whole line. It's 150K, it takes a while. They also had because of the isolated nature of them, they have their response in terms of getting people to solve outages takes time because they have to come from Geraldton and other bases. And that's unfortunate issues. They have put some generating facilities in the city, in the town, but it's actually to maintain voltages in emergencies, not to actually supplement the grid. So it's inadequate. But I will look at keeping those there till after Easter. I understand the importance of Easter. I will ask Western Power to accelerate their steam cleaning in silicon. But I will also address, hopefully cooperative with you and others, I think this is an example of regulatory failure. The Kalbarri line is a perfect example of considering disaggregated systems. The real problem is 150K of old line along the coast. We're going to get this problem recurring over and over again. I might add the poles are worn out. They're all over 40 years old. And to replace that line with poles is going to cost $10 to $15 million. So maybe it's time to, again, think about doing something other than what we do now, that is build this long pole system. And back in '95 when they put the solar system on, they didn't work, but the world has changed in alternative energy systems. And this is a perfect example where we should look at having a solar wind generating facility there that can supply the electricity to the whole city and also encourage all the residences and activities in the city to go to photovoltaics on rooftops and have some integrated system. But the trouble is, Western Power has a disincentive to do that. When we disaggregated them from the old Western Power and put the poles and wires separately, Western Power isn't allowed to get in generation. If it does, it cannot recoup the money for it. If it builds more poles and wires, it not only is allowed to do so, it's forced to do so and gets money back. So it has no incentive, it has indeed a disincentive to look to standalone facilities, and no one else, Synergy or otherwise, has an incentive to step in. So I've asked them to go around and identify all these sites that have this potential, identify them, and have them independently costed as to standalone generation. And do that before they sink all this money into new poles. That's a sunk cost. We could easily be going out and sinking hundreds of millions of dollars into poles to isolated areas that become completely obsolete in the near future. And also, importantly for Kalbarri, give a much inferior product delivery of service. Because even if we put new poles at $10 to $15 million, the salt and dust are going to continue. And we know the silicon doesn't last long in that, silicon coating doesn't last long in that area. So, as short term, we're steam cleaning and putting the silicon on. We put the generators in Kalbarri. I've asked them also to make sure that this is a long-standing problem. They respond more quickly. I've asked them to look at protocols of access during fire. That's just optimization of that protocols. As I discussed with you, it's difficult and we have to do it, but it's a protocol issue. And I've asked them also to look at Kalbarri and other places for standalone generation. It's the future. Well, the short term, the standalone will take some time. Again, they have a strong disincentive to look at this. So I have to take it outside Western Power and have somebody else do this. But the short term, they're doing the spraying, silicon, and also hopefully working on the protocols with local government now. Thanks for
very much.